Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network, presented by FanDuel. Back with me is our friend and Rockets Analyst Cooper Klein, who co-hosts the Upside Swings podcast. Always good to see you, Cooper. And before we get into the Rockets, I'm just kind of wondering if you're keeping an eye on some of your favorite draft prospects during the preseason.
Yeah, mostly the guys that have played us. So Ace, I don't think Queen played very much against us. I would have liked to see him for the Pelicans. But
I think Jeremiah, he was banged up, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's what I think happened. I saw Matt Kovich check into the game last night, and I was like, something's got to be up there because there's no reason why that guy should be playing over Derek Queen. I mean, Ace Bailey looked like a completely new guy. I saw some stats on Twitter, and it kind of stuck out to me on film. It's just how little they made him dribble. I thought that was really interesting. It seems like they want to mold him into the next coming of Lauri Markkanen and just let him grab the ball, rise right up over guys. Because for what it's worth, as inefficient as he was, he's very obviously got great shot making talent. And I think that he's got the body mechanics to turn into this kind of mega motion shooter that they've used Markkanen as. They're trying to get off of Markkanen. We'll see what that trade looks like. I imagine it happens sometime this season. But, I mean, during the season, I'm going to be watching a lot more Hornets than I probably should because Con Knippel's my guy. Hopefully Derek Queen can get healthy. I wish that when he was healthy, he'd start over Yves Missi, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then I'm really excited to watch Trey Johnson with Washington this season. I wasn't as high as a lot of people on Trey Johnson, but I mean, it's basically him and Cam Whitmore getting to take as many shots as they want over in Washington this season, and that'll be fun. Even if it's not good basketball, I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch. So I'll be watching a lot of those guys this coming season.
Yeah, I actually watched one of the Wizards games because I wanted to see Trey, and he looked like the best guy that they have talent-wise from what I saw. I frankly wanted to see a little bit more of him, but he was getting his shot off real easily and just very, very accurately. And it looked like he was already there at the 3-point line, the NBA 3-point line, like it was no big deal. So yeah, he's going to be a fun watch for sure. Let's get into some of the Rockets, because last week I looked at a few Rockets, but one name that we didn't get into much was Jabari Smith. Tuesday night, Jabari was the real standout offensively. In 3 preseason games already, Jabari shooting 48.6% from the field, 47.4% from 3, and 90.9% at the stripe. We're seeing a whole other level of aggressiveness from him too. In 23 minutes a game, he's averaging 11.7 field goal attempts. This was the dream, Cooper, when you drafted him. And in just like we predicted, I guess, it helps to take away the shots that Jalen and Dylan took so he can get his own shots now.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion over the summer about how much the Rockets would miss Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks pull-up shooting. And I think that the hope is that obviously you have one of the best pull-up shooters of all time in Kevin Durant, but then that Jabari can really step into that sort of pull-up shooting role. And we saw that. Like, he hit that one against the Pelicans where he was running in transition and it was like 3-on-3 break, but they're not going to respect me. So he just pulled it. Like, that exactly what I wanted to see out of Jabari. I've been so impressed with him this preseason. I mean, this is someone who I've been probably more critical of than anybody because he's very obviously got the talent and he works hard and he's gotten a lot better. But he really seems to have, like, everybody on the team looks a lot more confident dribbling the basketball in preseason, but especially Jabari and Tari, which we could talk about later. But I really think that such a big part of the calculus for the front office was Jabari is going to be ready to be a full-time starter, take this bigger workload on offense sooner rather than later. So let's actually start getting him prepped for this now. We're bringing in Durant. We're not losing that much by losing Dylan and Jalen offensively because you have a guy in Jabari who I really do think could fill it, especially with his new confidence, some of the newfound ball handling. He just looks stronger and more balanced as well. So I've been really, really impressed.
If you've heard me talk about it, I said Jabari, you could see the difference in his shooting at the end of last year in the playoffs. I figured there would be a jump there. And everybody talks, well, the Rockets, they don't have a lot of good shooting in their starting lineup, but I expected this from Jabari. I know KD's better than anything that we had last year as a shooter. And you also have whoever the other guy is in the starting lineup, which is going to be interesting because we're going to get to that, whether they're going to be a pretty good shooting team. And we got another couple of guys to talk about as well. And speaking of shooting, a big game changer for the Rockets, if what we're seeing for the preseason holds up, is free throw shooting. And I don't mean free throw shooting in general. When we're talking about free throw shooting with the Rockets and the issue, it's two guys. Şengün is 12 for 12. Amen is 11 for 12, 91.7%. Now you add in what Kevin Durant's going to bring. And, what could this mean, Cooper? The Rockets were dead last in the NBA at the stripe last year.
Yeah, obviously it's small sample size, but the Rockets led preseason in free throw percentage among all teams. They just hit a ton of them. And I mean, Amen specifically, his form looks so much better. He looks so much more confident at the line. Şengün looks so much more confident at the line. If I had to pick like a theme for the preseason, it would be the confidence. Everybody just looks so much more ready for their role than they looked, especially after like in that Warriors series. I felt like that was such a big issue for the first couple of games. So they just did not have that confidence in themselves. Too much was up in the air, too much uncertainty. But especially for like losing Fred at the last minute, everybody looks so confident and so ready to step into their new role. Everybody gets to kind of shift a half spot up the totem pole or whatever, other than Kevin Durant. But I'm really excited by what I've seen. You can't take much from preseason, but you can take very broad strokes. And that confidence just going into the season is going to be such a big thing for this team.
The biggest question for game one of the season is the starting lineup. We've seen Reed Sheppard with the starters and just saw Steven Adams the last game. Long term, you'd like Reed to be the guy, but it's hard to ignore how much better the Rockets are with Adams, Cooper. They were plus 26 in the 24 minutes against the Pelicans. We know what he did last year. In Sheppard's start against the Jazz last week, they were only plus 1 in 26 minutes. Do you got to go with Adams here, Coop?
I think it'll really depend on matchups. I think as much as it's like kind of antithetical to the Thunder, like you maybe think, oh, I kind of want to match up size-wise with the Thunder against a team that is so good offensively. You kind of need a guy like Reed who can make hard closeouts, make good rotations. You almost weirdly sacrifice less. You're less bound by, we have to play a zone and a drop when you play Steven Adams and Şengün together. When you have Reed out there, you can play a couple of different schemes. Maybe he's more individually exploitable, but he makes your scheme as a whole stronger. So I think against like these stronger teams that are, more contenders, you need a guy like Reed who can make the rotations. He's got his hands in passing lanes. He's got just good feel in general. I think he's an elite closeout guy, like defensively. When I have kids, I'm going to be making them watch Reed Sheppard closeout tape day in, day out, so they can get a feel for that kind of thing, because those are the little things you need defensively against elite teams. I think against teams like the Pelicans, who you're not that worried about their offensive infrastructure. When you play teams that you kind of just want to I just want to show up and beat them by 15 and not have to sweat about this at all, you're going to start Steven Adams because you know what you got. You're going to kill him. That would be kind of my thought, but there's also a world where Steven Adams is just so much better on the floor and he has such a high-end impact that, he's going to start. Every single game Steven Adams is able to play, he's going to start. So I can see it either way. I think I would lean Reed for the shot making, for the flexibility he gives you defensively, but it's up in the air.
Udoka has said this could end up being matchup dependent. Do you like that idea, or do you think, hey, they got to develop some chemistry between these guys?
I think if this was like a few years ago where we first brought in Fred and Dylan, then maybe they need to develop chemistry. But all of these guys, other than Kevin Durant, they've been playing together for a long time now. And I think that even in games where like Steven Adams starts, Reed is going to be one of the first guys off the bench. I think that it's not going to be like one or the other. It's just who's going to be out there first, which foot do we want to put forward first? Which one's going to be our strongest foot tonight? I like the idea of playing with matchups, playing with what you see as your biggest advantage on the floor. Like against a team like the Pelicans, where their backcourt is exploitable, yeah, start the big guys. I loved when they were like, okay, we're just going to pound the ball inside and score on Jordan Poole over and over and over again. Then they kind of got away from that as the game went on, and because they let like 2 or 3 bad possessions kind of get them down. They could really stand to work on their post-entry passing. This is a complaint I've had since like 2019, as the NBA is completely bereft of good post-entry passers anymore. Because if a guy's aggressive enough, you have to know exactly where to put it, exactly where the ball needs to go. But I really liked that style of offense. This kind of, yes, we're going to attack the weakest player on the floor, but every game it's going to be different how we attack that weakest player on the floor. Like Jordan Poole is fine on the perimeter, but he's absolutely a disaster on the interior. So let's just beat him. They have to take him off the floor, and then they don't have anybody to replace him. I really like that. And I think almost weirdly, losing Fred has kind of allowed them to explore more of this creativity offensively that I know I complained about so much for the last few years. Is like, you have some of the most intriguing, interesting offensive players in the world, and you don't want to play with them at all. You just want them to like be in this very blank, like, oh, just attack the weak link. There's no fun plays. There's no Tari Eason coming off of a DHO to get an easy dunk, in the last few seasons. So, weirdly, because of that, I'm very, very excited offensively for this upcoming season.
All right, you listeners and viewers out there, put down your cigar and scotch and let us know in the comments, who do you think should be in a starting lineup? We want to hear from you. Is it Sheppard? Is it Adams? Is it Tari? Tell us what you think and why in the comments. If you missed it, I had on Texans analyst Garrett Williams, aka Texans Stressins. You're going to want to go check out what he had to say. He shared his trade targets, biggest concern with the Texans right now, and you'll get excited about our stat on how Stroud's improved this year. Our live Texans postgame show right after the Seahawks game this week, so you're going to have to stay up late for that. But if you don't, you can find it on our live tab. Listen on your way to work Tuesday or during your lunch break. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube with notifications so you can get updates on the live shows and all of our content. Also, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, because that's a great way to listen while you're in the car or on your way to the gym or whatever you're doing. All right, Cooper, we have no idea at this point how long Finney Smith is going to be out. It looks like Josh Okogie is taking his spot in the rotation. Okogie's been surprisingly efficient offensively, only 12 shots, but he's 58.3% from the field, 40% from three. Do you think Okogie's the 8th man in the rotation? What are you seeing from him?
I do like what I saw from Okogie in the preseason. I kind of expected him to come in and be like, hey, sometimes we need like an extra point of attack defender against these like smaller guards. Amen, I wouldn't say ever struggled, but sometimes you just need another body to throw it, the Steph Currys of the world. You need a guy who is smaller to fight through screens on the Damian Lillards of the world, the Trae Youngs. So I really like the signing, but if he can be this random free throw tank whenever he plays and just attack downhill and be aggressive and get into the paint, that's a wonderful, weird bench player. I was kind of hoping that we'd see more Tate. Has he been injured to start the preseason?
Yeah. They haven't said a whole lot about it, but he's going to be coming back from some ankle surgery that I guess he said he's been dealing with for the last couple of years. And so, hopefully we could see a more maybe mobile Jayshawn Tate than we've seen the last couple of years. Maybe there's been something affecting him that we just didn't know about.
Tate deserves to play on a winning basketball team after the hell he went through his first few years in the league. But In the meantime, I think Okogie can hit enough corner threes to keep a defense honest, or even if not, if you don't close out all the way and he doesn't want to take the three, he can just drive it on you. He's very strong. He's very solid in a pretty wiry frame. I think he's just a really fun bench player who, like, there's a chance that he can give you 10 minutes in a playoff game. If the corner 3-pointer will fall, that's a wonderful, wonderful player. I don't know if the three is like real. I don't think he's ever shot it particularly well or even close to this well. But he also hasn't played on very many good teams, right? Where he's able to just kind of like, okay, I can just catch and shoot from the corner. And that's all he needs to do. That and close out and defend. He has a very simple role. And I think there's a world where he can hit enough of those threes to really be like a real rotation guy, which would be a huge get because it feels like we have no other, 6'3" players on the entire roster with Fred out. So I really think he could be a big boon, and he could kind of play, the wing for such a small guy. He's so strong. He's athletic. I think he can kind of slide into that like Eric Gordon, but I'm technically the small forward kind of thing that we got from him the last few years of his tenure here.
Yeah, the length looks for real. The defense that we heard about coming in, that looks real too. And I think that has been what separates him in my mind from Jae'Sean Tate, is his defense is definitely better. Jae'Sean, he could look good at times, but he could also commit fouls that you don't want out there. And, that IQ that Udoka talks about was an issue for Jae'Sean Tate over the years. So we'll see what happens with that one. If the Rockets needed a few minutes from another point guard with, the lack of point guards that they have this year, who would you rather see, Cooper? Aaron Holiday or JD Davison? Holiday, more reliable shooter, but Davison is a pure point guard. I'd give Holiday maybe the defensive nod for now, but what do you think?
I've been kind of anti-Davison since he got a goaltending block on the Cougs a few years back that ended up in the stupidest loss of all time at Alabama. But I also don't know how much I buy him as like a full rotation guy. Aaron Holiday, for as much crap as I've given him for just like sometimes not being able to defend a traffic cone, can show up, be a professional, hit threes. He hit that ridiculous floater to win the game last night. I mean, it shouldn't have gotten that close. We were up like 15 with 3 minutes left or whatever, and it shouldn't have gotten that close, and that's probably Aaron Holiday's fault. But knowing what you're going to get is just a little bit more valuable, especially with this team where every single one of the starters can be the point guard and like bring the ball up the floor and get the team into their sets. And there's just not as much of a focus on like, hey, Fred, dribble the ball and pass and set up our offense in that kind of way. You need more guys like Holiday who can draw closeout, command attention, and just knock down some open shots. As lacking as he is in other areas, if Davison can show that he can hit those threes, give him the reins. Let him be that guy. But I don't buy the shot with him as much as it looked good in his limited minutes in the preseason.
I want to give you a shot to talk about your boy Cooper Flagg for just a second. We're going to come back to the Rockets, but I watched one of the preseason games. The hype is not fake, man. I mean, in fact, our friends at FanDuel give you a shot to take Flagg getting 2 triple doubles this year at 4-1 plus 400. And I'm jumping on that, Coop. He's the Mavs' best passer, and he could be a double-double machine. So it's not going to be hard, I think, for him to get some triple doubles this year.
Jason Kidd maybe could take away some of those opportunities because he doesn't know what he has in Flagg, and he's not the best coach in the world. But I think that if Anthony Davis gets hurt, or D'Angelo Russell gets hurt, or any of these things happen, there's a world where he's averaging like 27-7 for like the last 2 or 3 months of the season. Guess what? That means mathematically you're probably getting a few triple doubles, especially with how bad the Mavs injury luck has been the last few seasons. Anthony Davis, historically injured. I'd take it. Go for the bet. I don't, if they're fully healthy, I don't think he'll put up more than 1, but you got to take that bet on the injury bug biting the Mavs in the butt.
Yeah, don't forget, he's going to have maybe a difficulty some nights getting that double-digit boards because AD and Derek Lively, but that's probably what I'm counting on is that, yeah, those guys might miss some games, especially AD. So yeah, that's worth keeping an eye on for sure. I want to hit a Rockets concern, but before I get there, just want to help you listeners worried about your personal data. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. What do data brokers do? Well, your name, contact info, social security number, home address, even info about your family members could all be compiled by data brokers and sold online. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. As someone with an active online presence, hey, this stuff's important to me. I know it's important to you guys. I've had issues in the past. I know the hassle. Have you ever been a victim of identity theft, harassment, doxing? If you haven't, you probably know someone who has. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. And we got a special discount for you. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/HIT and use promo code HIT at checkout. The only way to get 20% off, join deleteme.com/HIT and enter code HIT at checkout. That's deleteme.com/HIT, code HIT. Okay, Coop, one thing I'm slightly concerned about from watching the preseason is the fast break defense for the Rockets. They've got a bunch of bigs who aren't quick and who aren't used to playing transition defense. Should I be worried?
I was kind of thinking the same thing. And as much as I kind of worry about that with the starters, you have a few guys who kind of limit that for me. You have Amen, a really good transition defender. I think Reed is a sneaky, really good transition defender. He's just good at reading what guys are going to do. And then you have a guy like Tari, another mega athlete who can get back there. I think that they just weren't really going full speed at all times in transition, defensively. I think that your point about the bigs is really my biggest worry, is that just like their identity as this huge, we're going to pound it inside and use that to create advantages and easy looks. That kind of allows other teams to really take advantage of that. When you crash the offensive boards as hard as we do, you don't send guys back in on defense to limit transition buckets. So you're really relying on those individual guys not getting hurt, not being too tired, and not fouling out with your transition defense. And that can be kind of a worry, especially, with Amen being such a huge offensive focus this season. I mean, he's really been such a huge part of their offense the last few games. But I think that that's one of the things that you sort out. You figure out, maybe when we have Clint on, we send him back in transition defense and don't use him as much as an offensive rebound, like all the time guy. Or Reed doesn't need to be out there crashing the boards. Sometimes you don't need Tari to go do this, or I think they're going to really use the season to find that balance against certain teams, what they need to do, when they need to be leaking out, going back in transition, all these different things. I'm worried, but let's give it a few more months before we start ringing the alarm bells, really getting up in arms about it.
Yeah, with Tari, I would love him as a transition defender, but we know he likes to get those offensive rebounds and he's got a nose for it. So it's hard to limit him. Sheppard, I like his ability to steal and get his hands on some basketballs, but if he's alone in a 2-on-1 at his size, it's over with. And, even one guy, unless he's going to somehow be able to get that ball out of the guy's hands when the guy brings it down, otherwise they're just going to power through him, aren't they? I mean, that's my thing with Reed Sheppard is, he's still just not going to be physical enough. And, that's been my deal with him, is like, he's going to have to be elite offensively, because defensively, you just can't help it. There's just stuff that, he's not going to be good at on defense. And, he's good at like the sneaky stuff, the steal that you're not expecting by taking a passing lane, maybe getting a hand on a basketball on a help guy more than I would say even on a guy going to the basket. Or, you look at what he did with the block shot. That guy, I don't know if he was expecting Reed to just fly out of nowhere with the block shot against the Pelicans at the 3-point line, but it's that type of stuff. But Yeah, I don't know. It's just some of these guys are going to have to, you're going to have to teach them how to get back, and they're not used to it. Amen. Even KD, I don't know if that's something that he had to do a whole lot at some of the different spots that he's been. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, I would say that I've seen some complaints from Suns fans about KD's like transition defense and like hustle to get his offensive, his own offensive rebound and like his motor. He's like 36. I don't know what you're expecting from a guy who is out there to put up a bunch of mid-range shots and be a pretty good second side rim protector. Their big complaint is, oh, he doesn't fight hard enough to get enough of his own shots. And it's like, well, you can't be expecting that from a guy who's built like a twig and is that old. It's just not realistic. I think that KD's play style actually does limit a lot of those opportunities. Obviously, he had the bad one last night where he turned the ball over on like an easy across pass, and then he fought for it, but then he lost it, and they had the 2-on-1 where Tari was on the chase down but couldn't catch up to Trey Murphy. But I think for the most part, his kind of style of play of getting into the short mid-range, into that like turnaround, into the fade, kind of limits transition attempts because it's steady, it's inherently one-on-one, and he's good enough at making the passes, like the simple passes, to limit opposing transition attempts. And with how good everyone else's handle has looked, I mean, honestly, the guy who I've thought had the worst preseason in terms of turnovers was Amen. And a lot of his turnovers were like just trying to force stuff that it's like, just either take the layup or make the easy pass. Like you don't need to be doing full skips to the other corner every single time. I can see it really being a worry if they don't figure it out, or like they really decide like, oh, the double big lineup is our thing. We're going to do this. But I think that they'll find something schematically. And when it comes to the playoffs, when you're really able to slow things down, I think transition defense just isn't going to matter as much. Also because the Pacers aren't in our division and probably won't make the finals this season. So we don't have to worry about, the most deadly transition teams in the entire world really ever.
Yeah, I don't know who's talking about Kevin Durant, and stuff that he's not doing, but he just turned 37 a couple of weeks ago. When he started, I should say, there was no Twitter and there was no Oklahoma City franchise when he started. Let's get off Kevin Durant for a second. Any observations from what you've seen in the preseason, either good or bad?
I think Tari's handle is like his just like body control is really the main thing I would say. This has always been a guy who's strong, a guy who's athletic, but he looks like, it looks like he grew into his own body, which is a weird thing to say about like a 24-year-old man at a certain point, but he's got a long, lanky body. He's very tall, got a huge 7'2" wingspan, and he just looks like he's finally gotten that hand-eye coordination, that proprioception, these small things. Like there was the time he was bringing it up against like very tough pressure, and he was hitting behind the back tweens, between the legs. He didn't really go anywhere, but he didn't lose the ball. If I had seen Tari do that last season, I would have like instantly like buckets of sweat would be pouring down my face. I'm like, oh, this is a turnover. This is actually a turnover. We've seen some flashes of stuff like this at times, but I'm super excited. I think that the fact that everyone's had to kind of bring the ball up, as a team has really kind of empowered him a little bit. And maybe he holds onto the ball a little bit too long when he does bring the ball up. But man, he's hitting his layups at a really high rate. I mean, he's had some really hard ones where he's having to go through guys' bodies. He's finally using his strength in a real way, putting his shoulder in and then extending. He hit the the alley-oop that was really poorly placed, and he was contested, and he just kind of tapped it in with his finger. Like, oh my goodness. If he had done that last season, it would have gone back and into the third row off the backboard because he just didn't have the body control to do things like that. So that's been I think that's the single biggest jump I've seen over the offseason, other than the Amen jumper. If Amen's free throw shooting and some of the three-point shooting is at all real, you can't say that that's not the big thing. Reed looks like a real NBA player. He looks confident. He didn't, as a rookie, look like a real NBA player in a lot of different ways, but he's out there. My favorite play of the entire preseason was the one where Tari kind of drove baseline against the Jazz. He drove left, and then he gets kind of trapped against the baseline. He can't like extend to get to the basket, and Reed just hammers as hard as he can to the corner, and Tari whips him the ball. Nice skip pass. Reed gets right over to it. Motion three. Like, beautiful. Like, that's the kind of chemistry that we need to be seeing between these guys, you know, as they get older, as they really develop. Just like guys who understand what the other guy's doing, and they see these kinds of things. And all of these guys are really starting to get to that point. They've played together so long. They're getting older. They're starting to get closer to their primes. I'm really so excited. We talked all summer about how excited we were for this team, but this is like seeing it in action. It's even better than I could have hoped for, especially after the Van Vliet injury.
Last year about this time, we didn't think the Şengün extension was going to happen, and then it did. So maybe the Tari extension is coming, and that would make me feel a little bit better, because I feel like the value for Tari might be a little bit better right now as opposed to the offseason, although the guys that are waiting around for extensions, it didn't work very well for them this past offseason, but I don't know if it's going to remain that way next offseason, because I know more teams are going to have some money on the book. So that's going to be an interesting storyline. He is at Ali_oop_Coop on X. Anything you want to plug before we go, Coop?
I did the graphic design for a college basketball magazine released by the Center Hub, which is our podcast network. If you want, previews for all 365 college teams, if you want top 100 player lists, if you want all these different things, top 25 teams, breakdowns of the rosters, of the coaches, it has exclusive interviews, it has all this great stuff. If you want any of that for like $12-13, you can purchase that from thecenterhub.com. That was my labor of love that I have been drowning in for the past few months, but we got it done. We got it submitted earlier this week, and I'm really proud of the work everyone did to get it out. And we're always posting over at Upside Swings. We're doing some redrafts. We're going to be releasing a just discussion about sophomores in the NBA from the 2024 class. We talk a lot about Reed. That'll be releasing in the next few days. And then we have a rookie report coming out next week. That'll be really fun. It was great as always. I'm just so excited for this team, and I'm really excited to just get to talk about it, So thanks again for having me on. It was a great time as always.
Yeah. And also, you do so good at covering the draft guys. We had on Corey Tulaba from No Ceilings, and those guys do a fantastic job. I had them on a few years ago, and I just want to congratulate them, because the NBA announced a multi-platform streaming service where they're going to be a part of that, the No Ceilings guys. And I know the work that they put in, just like you guys do on your show. So really want to congratulate what they're doing over there. And once again, you knew them here before they shot up big time. I mean, we've seen other people on the show that took the Houston Sports Talk bump, the Mina Kimes of the world. And it's real magical to see other people have that sort of success. Before I go, just want to thank our friends at FanDuel, FanDuel.com, the place to go. And thanks so much, Coop, for all the great insight and giving us your time as well.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.